Welcome back to Yes, I'm Adopted, Don't Make It Weird, Season 5, Episode 3, and today we are going to be talking about how there are two sides to every adoption story. Elaborate. Go. This is your turn. We practiced this. You're supposed to talk right after.
Get it in post.
We practiced.
It's fine. There was no practice. What was I going to launch into right after that? I don't know.
Of
things?
Limericks.
Sure. There once was an adoptee named Brett. He was as adopted as you can get. He had a bunch of rants and fairly nice pants. Then his daughter peed on him and made him wet. Limericked. Bam. Oh my gosh.
That could be the episode right there. We could end right now, and I think it would have had value added to people's lives. That was really good. All right, so what are we talking about today?
Okay, so we're talking about we've said some things on this show.
Oh boy, have we said things
over the last 5-ish seasons of this show. We've said some things that that are very useful to a lot of people.
I like to think so.
We've said some things that are also a little controversial to a lot of people. And then when we say those things that are controversial, then Brett has to deal with the aftermath on social media. And it's great.
Oh boy, do I.
Because I never read them. So that's been fun. And I feel like over the last season, we've started to dig into those questions that are maybe a little bit touchier, perhaps, than the previous seasons where we were trying to be more funny and do some other stuff. And I think we still try that. Clearly, there was a limerick a minute ago, but you know, it's been interesting because what we have is a 15-minute format to address a thing that takes years of debate to really prepare for.
Study.
Right? And and what we present here within this context of this show is not necessarily expertise, but it's mostly opinion, right? And we're here to just kind of generally inform and entertain and maybe enrage a little bit.
Yeah.
And
I'm really good at that last one.
Which is
really good at it.
Which is kind of what we've been doing, and you know, and some of the stuff that we've said over the past couple of, I don't know, episodes or whatever has garnered a lot of just really varied and interesting responses.
Ooh. And comments and messages. Pretty sure somebody's gonna try to send us something in the mail here soon.
Yeah.
It's been a very interesting journey. You know, we always joke around about, like, you know, if you have anything important to say, don't say it on the internet because people will troll you. And that's what we're finding. But there's a lot of really good conversation that's been coming out of the topics that we've been talking about, like sparking some debates and some, I don't want to say arguments, because arguments isn't helpful. Arguing is never helpful with people.
Sure.
But, you know, good conversation. So we're going to continue doing that and making people upset, probably. But there's a reason why. And like Davo said earlier, because there's always two sides to every single story. Ours is just the better side of it.
I mean, it's... okay. Let's go back 2 episodes. Okay. And I said a thing that's gotten quoted several times now, which I'm not redacting by any means, but I said that just because your story is justified doesn't mean it's useful. Right? Which I think is true. I still think that's true. Just because your story is justified doesn't necessarily make it useful. But I'd like to add a word onto the end of there. Or not maybe add a word, but like it doesn't mean that it's over either. Right? Like, just because your story is justified doesn't mean it's useful, but maybe it's just not useful now. Maybe you're just not at a point where you've moved past wherever your current story is because your current story is not over. There's more to that story, and there's always more to that story. And if you go back to last week, we had talked about when should people adopt and when is like the right time, or what are the prerequisites for adoption in order for adoption to take place. And what we presented was our thoughts on that, but again, it was only part of a story.
Yes.
And the responses that we got were either positive or negative. There was no like in between on that one, right?
Yeah, I really don't know how to feel. You should figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty polarized on that one.
Right.
But even you read some of the responses, which I normally don't, but I did
Mhm.
this week, and you read through a bunch of the responses. And again, what you're going to find is that those responses are motivated by half of a story.
Yes.
All I'm seeing is your response, and I don't know how you got there.
Right.
I don't know how you got to that thing, right? So like you look at both of our stories over the last 30 something years.
Yeah.
Right? And like there's a part of that story that in my 20s, if that's where it had ended, would have been terrible.
Right. Oh, I got super angry at everybody, and then I just stopped there. Welcome to my life as the Hulk.
But even the Hulk got useful later
Yeah.
on. Like, I don't know.
Came Professor Hulk.
He did. But there's so much more to every one of those stories that you see on the internet or that you see in an article that just gives it context that you would never understand just reading text.
Right.
Right? And every adoption story has so much more to it than we're ever going to get coming across in however many characters go in a tweet or however, you know, or even, I mean, in a book. Like,
Right.
I've read, I don't know, dozens of
read a lot
adoption
of
books
books.
over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And then I've met a couple of the authors, and what they've put in 200 pages doesn't even skim the surface of who they
No.
are as people.
Right.
Right? And so you look at a show like this, and I continue to advocate the video format because it provides facial expressions and it provides emotional content and tone of voice and that kind of stuff. I don't know how you're gonna.
I
mind
can't
that.
convey tone of voice.
Right? But it's still not the whole story. All of that to say, coming on the other side of last week's episode, just because we didn't necessarily touch on all the things that have gone wrong in adoption doesn't mean that we're naive to them. We know that they're there. There are definitely, there's been some things, even recently, that have popped up in the news that have kind of rocked the adoptosphere.
Right.
As it were, like Kindred had brought up an interesting article.
Well, like the article was, what was he? He was some government official.
Like some city planner or some government, some person in a position of government power.
Right. He basically had an underground scheme of bringing women from another country into this country, birthing their babies, and then kicking them out of the country, and then selling their babies for adoption. Or that's what we're told.
At least that's what I got out of the 3 paragraphs that were part of
Right.
that.
We don't know. There was a much bigger story there. Like, did they come in voluntarily and sell their babies?
We don't know. Either way, like
It's terrible.
The end result of that is wrong.
It's terrible,
right?
yeah.
Like we see that, and that's clearly something that is that we don't agree with.
He's a monster either way. Let's just get that out there. Monster either way.
Like, and you know, one of the big arguments is like the adoption as industry.
Right.
Like we're a puppy mill or something. I don't know. And yeah, that's absolutely out there. I've absolutely seen that, you know, because things have happened. There's been some stuff that is legitimately bad that has gone on in the world of adoption and in the world in general. There's some stuff that has gone down that hasn't been great, and we totally recognize that.
So there have definitely been people that have profited over adoption. You know, whether it's bringing people in and selling their babies, like Monster Councilman General, whatever his name was. I don't even know the dude. I should probably find that out. But the monster, that guy that we were just talking about, there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of abandonment, there's a lot of other issues going on in the adoption realm that we are fully aware of. However, again, and we have this disclaimer all over the place whenever we put up an episode like this, these are our thoughts and our opinions. So that's all we have to go off of.
It's our experience that's led to how we respond to the things that we see, and the things that we perceive, and it will be your experience that leads to how you respond.
Yeah.
To the things that you perceive and see.
And it's the same with like all those angry people out there, right? You know, you could just look at them and be like, oh, they're just angry at the world, they're angry at the world of adoption and the state of adoption and all this other stuff. But you don't know the backstory. You don't know the level of abuse that they might have gone through. You don't know the level of neglect that they might have gone through. There is something so much deeper in that story that doesn't come across in a 12-minute video or a book sometimes even. It's a lifetime journey. Like, that's what this whole thing is. It's a lifetime journey of being able to find yourself, being able to heal, being able to decide who you are going to be, which is why we talk a lot about what it actually means to be an adult. You know, making decisions, figuring out your identity, and owning up to those things. Like, that's what it comes down to. And when you get a format like this, you're going to hear some opinions that you are not going to like. We hear a lot of your opinions that we don't necessarily like. But we keep going, and we're civil, and we still love you.
Start your own channel.
Yeah. See, that's the ranty side of me that comes out right there, because I have to deal with the backlash of these of the things that he says.
It's true.
Yeah, right.
Both live and on video.
Maybe we should just go back into limericks.
Maybe we should have... I'll try to end on a limerick. How's that sound? There has been stuff in our lives that has definitively been negative.
For sure.
Over the years.
For sure.
And I recognize that. And much of that can trace back, at least psychologically, to this concept of adoption.
Right.
Because there's stuff that we weren't prepared for.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff that our parents weren't prepared for. There's stuff that our culture wasn't prepared for.
Yeah.
As it came to adoption, especially in our upbringing.
Right.
And that's still true today. There are still gaps. There's still holes.
Mm-hmm.
But if that is the end of the story, well, that can't be the end of the story.
And then it just sucks.
Right? If that's the end of the story, then why bother? Like, why bother keeping going? Why bother continuing your story if that to you is the end?
Right.
To which I say it's not the end.
No.
That might be your story now,
Mm-hmm.
but your story is not over. So continue forward. As a personal ranty note.
Oh. Now can I get the button ready?
Okay.
All right.
As a personal ranty note, making other people miserable so that they are as miserable as you versus healing and finding positivity and finding healing in your life is way better than that.
Pray.
I mean...
I wanted to hit the button.
Yeah, I mean, it's
not worth it.
It's not helping.
It's not worth it to try to make other people as miserable as you in order to feel your side. Now, okay, we live in what we like to call the victim mentality, mindset, generation, time, whatever it is that you want to fill in the blanks with. Everybody wants to be the victim because the victim is the one that gets the attention. That is a crappy kind of attention to get. Don't be the victim, be the hero. Heroes are so much better than the victims. They get to swoop in with their cool colored spandex and their capes and save the world. When the victim is the one that's constantly being trapped underneath cars or dangled off of buildings. Nobody wants that life. Be the hero.
Don't get dangled off of
or,
skyscrapers.
With Batman, be a hero long enough for them to see you as the villain or whatever that quote is. So while you're figuring out what it is that you need to be, make sure that you stick around with us by commenting, sharing, and subscribing. We would love to hear more of your guys' thoughts. Yes, we actually would like to hear your thoughts. Even though we just spent 15 minutes talking about people's thoughts, we still want to hear them. We want to have conversations with you, so please comment down below or go ahead and send us a private message if it's more of the ranty side that you don't want the rest of the world to hear, which is probably, a better choice.
Or throw a GIF in the comments about ranting.
If you want to rant.
Sure.
Yeah. All right.
I just like GIF in the comments.
I know you do.
That's one of my simple joys in life.
Just GIFs.
GIF in the comments.
So, as always, please make sure to check out the additional resources that we have. You can find them on YesI'mAdopted.com. We have a bunch of merch with shirts and things, and we're coming out with mugs because y'all keep bugging us about getting some mugs, and we drink tea religiously now on the show. And so we're getting mugs made and a bunch of other things. So make sure you guys go and check that out. And then if you would like additional resources, we do have the course That is the well-adjusted course if you are a parent out there and you're dealing with a lot of adoption issues with your own kids. This would be a great time for you to go and check that out. It has a lot of really, really good lessons that we have learned over the last many years that we would love to be able to share with you. So please go and check that out. All the links will be in the description. And that is it. So signing off for today, I'm Brett. That's Davo. I have no idea what I'm doing as a sign off right now, so cheers.
Make a limerick.
Oh, limerick. The adopted guys like to drink tea, but it really makes Davo have to pee. So he sits here in pain, thinking about the rain, but then he just goes and drinks more tea. Ta-da! Limerick.
See you next week.